Here's a full look at Test 4 from the 2025 Rattlesnake Enduro. And yes, that was me sneaking in front of Hunter Higginbotham, who was a 250B rider on our row. He beat me by a couple seconds in the first test. I finished right behind him in the second test, and then I actually beat him in the third test. So going into the fourth test, I said, you know what? I need to see if he's holding me back. I'll show you in a little while that isn't the case. As I've stated in the past, I'm trying to stop less so that less things slow me down. And when I saw Justin Lafferty crashing in front of me, I said, you know what? I got to get into the woods and I got to keep going. I knew he was going to come back around me, but I had to keep moving forward. As you can see, I was pushing really hard and I started making a lot of mistakes. This was kind of an amalgamation of test 2 and 3 mixed together. So there were some rocks, there were some slippery roots, and honestly, I just kept pushing myself to a point where I was overriding the trail, and I had to let Justin back by. Goodbye, Justin. It really does suck rewatching this footage to watch how fast he rode away from me, but I can really see how much I'm struggling. It's a little bit slicker than I think I thought it was going to be, and I'm not really putting my front tire in the places I would like it to be. I do think that I did not have my suspension figured out on the day, but we'll get more into that in the full race recap because holy moly, the rocks in test 2 and 5 are something to be talked about. Watching that last section though, it looks like it was starting to come together, and I think it was because it was a little bit rockier and I was starting to stand up a little bit more and let the bike work more underneath me. When it was getting really slick and we were sliding into the turns, it felt like we were back in Ohio and I just could not control the motorcycle. So I do know that that is a condition that I just do not know how to ride in. But when it gets a little bit more technical with the rocks, I start to figure that out some. Woo! That right there, that was somebody blipping their throttle at me to go by. Let's see who it is. I made a mistake going into this test and jumping in front of Hunter. So Hunter, this is my public apology to you that I should not have done that. And what we had worked out in the pecking order earlier in the day was the pecking order for the rest of the day. I can hear it now. Get a recluse. Why don't you put a recluse in that thing? Boy, back in my day, we knew how to use a clutch. In the long run, that was just a rider error. I could still see Hunter in front of me, and I was trying to rush that turn, and I blipped the throttle. I didn't release the clutch on time or pull it in on time, whichever way you want to look at it, and I stalled the damn motorcycle. It was kind of fun because I was attacking and I could just see Hunter up ahead, so it was kind of this weird dance. I was doing a good job standing on the motorcycle, controlling the clutch, controlling the throttle, and moving the bike forward. Granted, I'm not a AA racer, but I felt pretty good in this moment. That raped ape sound that you heard behind me, that was Ryan Piper, and he is from row 24 behind us. He's in the NE Pro 2 class, and he was 17th on the day, 9th in his class. He actually beat Will Steven Piper on our row by 2 seconds in this test. Pretty damn impressive. You can see he's pretty much already gone. I remember entering this section of the trail because it was really slick. This left-hand turn coming into this little muddy section, I just said, okay, you have to keep figuring out a way to attack. I didn't get scared of the ruts and I just tried to keep the bike in it. And that is just me learning over the year from the way that I've been trying to figure out how to ride. I'm trying to make sure that I don't think about the crash that could happen, and I try to think about the ways to make sure that I'm moving forward and keeping myself upright. Just ahead, I could see another rider, and it was kind of this neon-looking backpack that they had on, so probably a hydration bladder. And I didn't know who this rider was, but I definitely used it as a rabbit, something to chase, to see, okay, can I catch this rider? And I know that in this section, I was riding a little bit more aggressive and I was attacking a little bit better because I was trying to reel them in. It did take me about a minute and a half, but I did catch them here in just a little bit, make it past them. It's cool to re-watch that footage and kind of remember what I was trying to do at the time and that I was able to accomplish it. Pretty neat. Now that I was able to catch up to him, I noticed that coming up is the 36 mile marker. And this test, which is test 4 on the day, started at mile 33 and it was a 6.5 mile test. So coming up on 36, we are actually just over halfway through this test, right? Halfway would be that 3.25, if you will, 3.25 to make it to 6.5. I think that's how math works out. There it is. There's mile 36. So we got a little bit more to go. What have you guys recognized so far that you think I could be doing better? What have you seen that you are impressed by? Not that you need to be impressed by me, but maybe it's something that you see I'm doing that you'd like to work on. Let's keep going. You saw me getting confused there. This is the first time for 2025 that I've been this early, right? Typically, I have been riding in the 40s, where now I'm on road 23. And obviously, we'll talk a lot more about being early on the full race recap. But in that moment, what you noticed was the hot lines, right? The pro lines are starting to develop, but they're not super developed like they are in the 40s. And so I was following that hot line, but then I kind of lost where the arrows were to make sure that the line that I was on was coming back to the trail. That's one thing I noticed about being in the earlier rows now in the 20s instead of the 40s is the hot lines, right? The pro lines, typically where racers are just going around other riders, are a little bit harder to follow and they haven't fully baked themselves in yet. Test 4 seemed to have rolling elevation. As I rewatched this test, I remember that it felt like we were in a fairly smooth up and down, right? There was nothing that we really had to climb up or, if you will, descend quickly down. What I'll show you in the full race recap, there were definitely some other tests that had much quicker elevation. Nothing that would compare to Ohio, more along the lines of Missouri. And that's the way I felt about this test. So take Missouri, turn it up a dial. That's what we got in some of the other ones, but nothing that compared to Ohio. I like it when clubs do this. They were trying to direct us off of what was the main trail and to make sure that we didn't wind up going the wrong way, and they used a lot of ribbon to make sure that we made the correct turn. That could also be an area where we're going to circle back around, and about 200 yards on the other side of that hill is where the trail comes back. Also could be part of it. But I definitely want to applaud the club because that is a lot of extra work. I know that than just putting up arrows, but it's much appreciated. I could hear the next rider coming up, getting ready to need by, and that was going to be Lane Whitmere from row 25. So now he's caught me by 2 minutes down, but he was 19th overall, and he did win his class in this test, which he was from the AA class, which you can watch him just ride away from me being so smooth. I did want to try to hang on as long as I could, but in the long run, I could see in this one straightaway, he was just bouncing down the trail in a way that I was not going to be able to keep up. Good job, Lane. All right, let's finish out this test. I'm glad to see that I'm standing up more in the turns like I just went through. There are times where it is more beneficial to sit down and make sure that we're getting our weight forward so that we can get traction. But the more I try to keep up with faster riders, the more I notice they sit down way less than I think we as riders think they do. They're trying to stand on the motorcycle so the motorcycle can work underneath them. And that is a really important thing to recognize. So if you're having trouble standing up on the motorcycle, that is something to practice when you're out riding. And if you notice a weakness, maybe it's muscles, maybe it's capacity to stand up, then that is something else to work on. As I was getting ready to go around this rider, I heard another rider coming up behind me. Knowing who has passed me so far in the day, I knew that it was going to be Chase Landers. The reason I looked back though, typically James Jenkins is on a two-stroke also right there behind Chase. He wasn't there, so that surprised me. But then I look at the times, and Chase Landers was a 5th overall in this section, so he was moving, where it looks like James Jenkins, which you'll see in a little bit, was 15th overall. So even though he would normally be chasing down Landers, he wasn't there this time. So good job, Chase. I was 3.5 minutes slower than you were. Oh yeah, you see that rider right there in the woods? That is Brock Hepler, and he has got the Enduro cam. I have been trying to get him to follow me at all of these races. It's just that being in the 40s, it's been really hard for him. So it'll be cool to see if he's got that footage, if he gets a chance to post it. I know that every rider I see in there that I send that, hey, Brock got you on the Enduro cam, they're really excited. So as dumb as it may seem, I'm also excited. I look forward to seeing it. if you could hear that two-stroke that was screaming behind me, but that was James Jenkins just sending it over that log as we're very much coming close to the end. That bike, every time this kid passed me, was just on the pipe. It was awesome to hear, and it made me realize how slow of a rider I am. Now, granted, I'm 20-something years older than this dude, and I gotta go to work after I drive home, but still, very impressive all day as I got passed by that guy. You'll get much more of that in the race recap. Besides the super test, this is the closest I would have been to Jesse Santucci. Somehow, I was only 20 seconds behind him, so I did a decent job in this test.
23W. Woo, thanks guys.
That test really was a hoot.
Wow, okay.
Thanks for watching, subscribe, and get ready for the race recap.